Okay, well, welcome everybody back to the blog this week. And tonight or today, it's tonight for us while we're recording. I have Doug Lanzo with me. Hi, Doug.
How are you?
Good. How are you
How's your
doing?
day? Great.
Good. It's good to have you
Happy to be here.
here. I want us to get started and make the best use of our time so we can hear all about you and the book you're going to share with us and your writing journey. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw it over into your corner and let you introduce
Sure.
yourself and tell us a little bit about you and about your
Sure.
family.
Sure. Appreciate that and honored to be here. As I like to tell people, I'm a lawyer by day and a creative writer by night. So I use a logical side of my brain during the day and love to get into creative writing, whether it be my novel, The Year of the Bear, which was newly released on November 1st, a novella that's coming out next year, I Have Lived, or my poetry with hundreds of internationally published poems. I love to do creative writing. And I've done that throughout my life, but in the last few years, it's really accelerated quite a bit. The Year of the Bear, my novel, I wrote back in year 2000 originally and researched it for probably about a year, traveling to Katahdin region of Maine, where it takes place, and researching the Penobscot tribe. Being a New Englander, I was born and raised in Easton, Connecticut, a small town of about 3,000 people, and a 3.25 acre tract of land teeming with wildlife. So
Nice.
to me, I've loved nature my whole life. Been fascinated with Native American Indians, and I shared the book with I have twin 13-year-old boys now. They'll be actually tomorrow's their birthday. They'll be 14
Oh,
tomorrow,
great. I was just going
and
to ask you if you had
yeah,
kids.
yeah, and they great kids. They also love nature. I shared with them this book, read it to them over the course of a couple months, and the summer before last, about a year and a half ago, and they loved it and it really encouraged me to publish it. So I sent it to three publishers, and two of the publishers were interested. I took the first contract I got since I wasn't, I'm a published poet, but as a novelist or author of a book, this was the first work of fiction to
Yeah.
to be under contract. So I chose an Ambassador International, and it's been released internationally. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, that is exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Um, so what else do you do in your life? If you
Oh,
work
sure.
all day, you write at night, do you have any hobbies or anything else that
Sure.
you like to do?
Yeah, yeah. Besides watching my children, which is probably its own hobby, I like I like playing sports with them and playing tennis, running. I used to be a runner in high school and in college, which kind of features into the Year of the Bear because the protagonist is a 13-year-old cross country runner.
Okay.
You don't have to love running to love the book, but I love outdoors. I love hiking, snorkeling, swimming, traveling. Pretty much a range of sports. So
Hmm.
I love writing, obviously, and just learning about new things. I'm a very intellectually curious person, so I enjoy researching new topics for
Okay.
whatever I write about, whether it be a novel or a poem.
So your hobbies have a lot to do with outdoor activities since
Hmm.
you're really into nature. And
Hmm.
so obviously those hobbies do find their way into your books because your book, The Year of the Bear, is set uh, in an outdoor setting. Is that right?
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
want to
it's
talk a little bit about that?
sure. Yeah, it's set in if you've ever been to Greenville, Maine area or Mount Katahdin, and Moosehead Lake. That's a really beautiful rural area of Maine or central Maine. The Penobscot Indians settled around there, and that mountain was sacred to them. They have a lot of legends about it as well, which I carefully researched, and about the Bear family, which is also important to the book, as you probably could tell from the title, The Year of the Bear.
Hmm.
And when I was there, I actually did see moose, bull moose in swamps, chewing, water lilies at night. It was a pretty fascinating area of the country. So that's and frankly, it's also important as the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail, and it's actually one of the first. I think it's the first mountain on which the sun shines every day. And famous Americans such as Henry David Thoreau actually tried to ascend it and wasn't successful, but Teddy Roosevelt climbed it, was
Oh,
successful, and then
wow.
Governor Percival Baxter, who you may have heard of, like Baxter State Park in Maine, but he was wealthy philanthropist who actually donated the whole mountain area to the public because the logging interests opposed him making it to a park. So he actually bought it and then donated it as a park.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
great history. Now, I'm sure some of that history makes its way into the story,
definitely.
but obviously all history. I know some of my friends who are historical fiction writers, they do like tons and tons of research to immerse themselves in that culture in that day, and they could have like chapters and chapters of research, but they say only a little bit of that can make it into the book because
Right.
the readers care about some, but
Hmm.
they don't want all of that. So,
Right, definitely. And there's different ways I worked it into the book. You obviously, it's not an encyclopedia. It's supposed to be a very engaging story, and I think based on all the reviews and ratings, endorsers, it seems like it achieved that level of excitement. And so I really made it come to life through the characters in the story interacting
mhm.
with each other, dialogue. So it has history interspersed in it, but it's definitely no one's felt like they're reading a history book. It's a lot more exciting than that.
Yeah. So is it set in current day or is it historical?
So it is historical. It's in the 1980s. A lot of my readers have told me that they feel it's so relatable, though, that they feel like it could be like more modern. It could be happening in, in the last decade or even today. But there are, some references. It's very authentic. So even the music that the characters listen to, you'll
Mhm.
recognize some of the 80s hits and
Yeah.
whatnot. So it does, and I think in a simpler rustic setting, it also has more of a classical feel. Some people say it reminds them of Call of the Wild,
Okay.
Where the Red Fern Grows was one of my
Uh,
favorite books growing up, and
yeah,
that was
I
one of my
love that too. I
references.
remember watching that movie as a kid and
Oh
just
yeah,
crying my eyes out.
yeah. And I like to. I don't want to give no spoiler alert here, but just it definitely is a heartwarming and heart wrenching novel, I would say. So I almost have like a three emotion guarantee. I joke with people that you'll laugh, smile, and or cry, and probably all three by the end of this story.
Yeah, and I just want to say the fact that 1980s is historical, I'm feeling really old right now.
It was a great decade.
It was, it was. A lot of authors that I talk to have always wanted to be writers, like it's been a dream since they were a child, but then others never even thought about writing until
Hmm.
later on in life. So where
Hmm.
do you fall with that? Or did you always want to be a writer, or were there other things that you aspired to
Sure.
be as a child?
That's a great question. So I always wanted writing to be a part of what I did. I never thought I would be a professional writer, or semi-professional, however you want to characterize it, as a published novelist. I'm not, so far I'm not living on my royalties, but I wouldn't mind, being a professional full-time writer at some point. But um, I kind of growing up, I loved writing even in second grade. What started me in writing was I was a very avid reader. So I'd read 30 to 40 books, and even in a summer. But one of my classmates read a short story to our class, and the class was all mesmerized by it. And I said, I could do that. I have like a lot of interesting ideas that I just would love to share with the class. So every week I started just writing a story about, a land of giants, a butterfly that changes colors, cave creatures that look like bears, and just like stories they really enjoyed. And to me, it was more just a work of passion. Just like I just loved writing, I just loved sharing, and loved the readers' reactions and just connecting with readers. So, I have a penchant for writing. I think even in college, I wrote editorials for the Harvard Crimson, Harvard International Review. I did professional publications as a lawyer, but I really enjoy most connecting with readers with works of fiction. Sometimes they're based in reality, but that I think you can have more depth and more. Um, Obviously, you can write about things that are more than just like a documentary, that have a little bit more interesting, I think, and flowing in the direction that the novelist creates with his imagination. J.K. Rowling, this is like amazing author Michael Crichton. Some of the ones that have influenced me, I just love their imagination and how they make it very authentic, because uh, they know what the reader is looking for. And Michael Crichton, for instance, he unfortunately obviously passed away, but he was great at introducing science and technology, but in a way that was not hitting you over the head. Just like, I don't do it with history. I introduce it through the characters authentically acting out and living their lives.
Yeah. So you've obviously been writing for a long time, writing stories, and I know you've written many, many poems that have been
Mhm.
published, and you're passionate about that too. So what prompted you at this point in your life to say, I'm going to go
Mhm.
after getting a novel published? Why now?
Sure. Yeah, that was to mention a little bit, just like my kids were my kind of primary inspiration when they said like I mean, I expected them to maybe enjoy it and just be like, oh, this, my father wrote this, but they literally were like, you have to publish this. Is a great book. This is better than most of the books I'm reading at school.
Okay. Okay.
So it
That's
kind of
high
gave me
praise
some,
coming from your kids.
yeah, because they're pretty honest.
Yes, kids
So
tend to be.
they're very honest with my poems or whatever else. They either like it or they don't. Usually they like it. So that was kind of the main inspiration there. But in my novella, it kind of all fell into place with my poetry. A lot of it was published during the pandemic. I had started writing poetry before that, but I frankly I got like kind of an anchor publication, the Caribbean Writer. I think was the only non-Caribbean writer that was published in one of their issues, and that just gave me a lot of confidence. I wrote my first haiku and then got it published in one of the most prestigious publications and was the runner-up in one of the first contests I ever submitted to. So I just started writing, but I wanted to really inspire. It's just the pandemic has been a really trying experience for everyone. I know
Oh
we're
yeah.
officially out of it, but obviously people
Yeah.
are dying every year,
Yeah.
every day. I mean, it's still a period where people need a lot of inspiration.
For sure.
So that's one of the reasons I publish more lately. I never write anything unless I feel inspired to do it. So that kind of gives it an authentic message, and I think resonates with people versus just writing, like not to like Charles Dickens is a great writer, but he also was paid by the word. So he has probably a few extra words in that. I try to paint with more of like a brushstroke and let the readers use their intuition to make all the connections.
Okay, so tell us about the genre that you write and
Sure.
what inspired you to write that genre.
Sure. So at a high level, I would say like inspirational writing. At breaking it down a little bit, my novel is a coming of age novel, adventure novel, and then my novella is it's a military romance suspense about an army ranger, combat medic. I think is pretty exciting and realistic. A series of flashbacks on his wedding day.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then my poems really range. I mean, they're inspirational in general, but really range in form from haiku to like traditional and hybrid, and from religious, patriotic, tributes, environmental, land and places, relationships, pets, animals, nature. So they really sports. So they range quite a bit in terms of what they cover.
So your novel and your novella, are they inspired by any true events or personal history at all?
Yeah, definitely. So my novel is more inspired by like nature experiences, and there's nothing in this story that's 100% true, but just in terms of the characters are all fictional, but in terms of the experiences as a cross country runner, as someone who loved nature, as someone who really admired, American Indians, like I carefully researched it, and it's even the legends and everything that's in the book, even my own experiences being a Christian author with faith and whatnot, and inspired it as well. And then in my novella, I Have Lived is inspired really by like 9/11 and the aftermath of that. One of my close friends died in 9/11.
I'm sorry.
Peter Alderman. Yeah, no problem. Peter Alderman. They actually established their family established a foundation to against terrorism and victims of terrorism and hate crimes, and internationally after that touched a lot of people's lives. And uh, people like Pat Tillman and the special forces that helped liberate Afghanistan. also inspired it.
Mm.
So I carefully researched the Special Forces, Army Rangers, their history, and was really taken, like blown away by just everything that they sacrificed and what a great job they did and really turning around. I mean, it was amazing how they liberated that country for the good. Obviously, it's unfortunately fallen back, but that was an amazing time and really inspiring by real events.
Right. So your novel, The Year of the Bear, when somebody reads that and they close that last page, get to the end, what are you hoping they'll get from that? Like, do you have some kind of a theme that's woven through that you want people to grasp and take away?
Sure, sure, yeah. I think it's a very powerful ending. Obviously, I don't want to give it away, but in terms of the messaging, they'll see really the transformation of a boy, his journey into manhood, um, just a lot of the obstacles and dangers. It's a very suspenseful book,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not, like I said, it's heartwarming and heartrending. So there's very painful lessons, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that he goes through that I think really relate to the reader. But I think the character is very relatable. Like at once, you'll feel like it's an ordinary kid, but at the other hand, you'll see that there are extraordinary challenges that he deals with, and how he navigates those will hopefully be very inspirational to the reader.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to tell them 100% what to take away. I want them to take it away, but I think they'll be inspired in anything they're trying to pursue, that they can, kind of realize their dreams, stick up to bullies, um, stand up for what's right in a way, that not just do the easy thing, take the easy path,
Yeah.
do what's like going to result in easy like popularity at school or whatnot. Because some of the book is about his school experiences too, dealing with a bully, standing up for anti-discrimination. But it's so hopefully they'll find some inspiration and relatable things to their lives, whatever they're going through.
Yeah, it sounds very relevant to today's needs in our world, especially our young people who are dealing with a lot of things that we never thought about at their age.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And and I think it's one of those books that people have told me, and people of all faiths have read it. I think Christian audience would really enjoy it, but a lot of my friends and colleagues who are Jewish have read it. People of all ages, from literally a 90-year-old reader, they said it was great. And someone just emailed me today that his grandson, who's 11, just read it and really loved it. And a friend of mine in Hong Kong and his best friend, both are 9 years old, said that it was the best book they had ever read. So it's really wide age range. Like some people have said, like, oh, it's a coming of age book. I thought it would be like a children's book. It can be read to a 9 or 11-year-old, but they're going to get a lot different message and level of depth than an adult reader, and it has those levels of nuances and depths because it's very authentic and well researched. So they'll find those. I mean, and they'll capture their attention. I just talked to someone today who literally in his 60s, a Jewish lawyer, and he read it. He says he hardly reads any books at all, but he said he actually enjoyed it, and he doesn't even read fiction generally. So it really captures your attention and imagination.
So even though it's written as a coming of age for like preteen into teenage
Mhm.
years, it's really anybody
Right.
is going to be able to
Definitely.
take away from it and
Hmm.
be blessed through the story and take away some lessons from it.
Definitely. I think especially people like fathers, mothers are mentoring their kids, grandfathers are mentoring there's figures of
Hmm.
all ages in the book that you can relate to. So teaching the education of the reader in kind of all aspects
Well,
is part of it. Yeah.
I know too that a lot of parents out there that like to read with their kids, even as their kids are older and able to read on their
Mhm.
own, to do an activity together. Say, read a chapter or two a night, through The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or, whatever it
Right.
might be. But this might be a good book for that.
Definitely. I've had even one of my former colleagues who read it to his children. I think one of his kids is probably like first grade. So even a child of that age, there's probably certain sections that you may like skip over that are for a little bit older audience in terms of their messaging. There's some like family, like dealing with divorce and kind of those types of issues that probably a 9-year-old or 8-year-old kid may not want to be. You might want to expose your kid to that,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no swearing, there's no sexual scenes, there's no gratuitous violence, there's everything. I think it's a very clean Christian principle book, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely, it could be read to someone that's younger, but I would just say that a parent would like want to just make sure they like read it in advance just to know which scenes maybe a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
more for a teenager than for a preteen.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a favorite quote from the book you'd like to share with us? Or
Uh, sure. Yeah.
if,
I mean, I may not get it 100%, but just one of the quotes is Sasquatch talking to Jason toward the end of the book. And he said, he gives him a bear claw necklace, which is like a sacred necklace of the Penobscot people. Um, and it has a special significance here. I don't want to give the book away, but just in terms of there's a bear club that he raises, and there's a bear claw from a really important bear to the story, I'll say, that he gives him, and he presents it to him and says essentially, son, you have become a man. So that is of great significance to Jason.
mm-hmm.
And that kind of epitomizes his journey. And Sasquatch, who's the Penobscot Indian that gives it to him, is his mentor. He also has a close relationship with his father, but it's more like healed along the way because his father goes through some anger, divorce in the family, and just he's learning how to be a father. Whereas Penobscot is wise beyond his year. He's a very like just noble, good person, and so he is ultimately who teaches Jason the most of anyone in the whole book. And even in like faith elements, he teaches him forgiveness because he himself was his father was betrayed by what he calls a blood brother, which is his closest friend who could have helped his father with some medical needs, didn't, and his father passed away. And he shows Jason's father Kyle, that he forgave even his blood brother for basically abandoning his father in his greatest time of need. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great story of forgiveness that really helps Jason in his faith journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, believe it or not, our time is gone. I can't,
Oh, okay.
it has flown by. So I really appreciate you meeting with me on this Zoom call and sharing about your writing and your book. And it sounds like God has great plans for your writing, your poetry, and your novels, and just taking this step of faith that you've taken since the pandemic and really putting yourself out there. And so we'll be looking for your novella. You said it's coming out next year.
Yes, it's scheduled. I don't have an exact date, but definitely next year, if not later this year. I'm really excited about that as well.
Yeah.
That's a Christian principle novella.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've offered a giveaway for the Year of the Bear for one person will win the book who comments on this interview. We'll have a random drawing, so the information for that will be included in the post when it goes live. So looking forward to that. So thanks, Doug. It was a pleasure to meet you and chat with
Thank
you.
you.
And I wish you the best as you continue your writing journey.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the interview and hope that my book inspires others, and really excited that someone will win a free book, and hopefully they'll enjoy it.
All right, you take care.
All right. Thank you very
All
much.
right, bye.
Bye.